I used to think freedom came from earning more. I chased raises, side hustles, and promotions, but no matter how much I made, I was still broke at the end of every month. Then one tiny habit changed everything, the $5 rule. Before we dive in, if stories like this help you rethink money, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Simple Stroke Official. We talk real habits, not hype, because quiet financial discipline beats loud motivation every single time. It started one random morning at a coffee shop. I ordered my usual drink, scrolled through my phone, and realized I'd spent $5 without thinking. It didn't hurt. That was the problem. I was bleeding money in small, painless amounts. So I made a rule. Every time I wanted to spend $5 on something unnecessary, I'd stop and ask, will future me thank me for this? Most times, the answer was no, and that's how change began, quietly, one skipped coffee at a time. I didn't stop enjoying life. I started choosing which moments deserve my money. That small pause turned impulse into intention. It wasn't about restriction, it was about awareness. $5 became a checkpoint between habit and control. The first week, I saved $15. It felt insignificant, but I stuck with it. Within a month, I had $75 sitting untouched. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Discipline doesn't need a miracle, it needs consistency. Soon, I began to notice patterns. Every emotional dip had a price tag. Coffee when tired, takeout when stressed, online shopping when bored. My wallet was paying for my emotions. That realization hit harder than any budgeting book ever did. So I flipped the script. Every time I felt the urge to spend, I'd write what emotion triggered it. Boredom, stress, insecurity, patterns started to appear. Awareness turned my $5 rule into emotional budgeting. I wasn't just saving cash, I was saving control. Within 3 months, that habit evolved into something powerful. I didn't crave spending like before. I started finding comfort in stability, not stuff. That shift, from seeking escape to seeking progress, was the real transformation money could never buy. The best part? I never felt deprived. Because I wasn't forcing myself to stop spending, I was choosing better moments to spend. It felt empowering, like I was finally the one making the rules, not my cravings or impulses. I started naming my savings goals: Freedom Fund, Future Apartment, Creative Projects. Every skipped $5 had a destination. Suddenly, those little choices felt meaningful, even exciting. Each decision connected to something bigger than a coffee cup. When people talk about saving, they imagine huge sacrifices. But the truth is, most wealth starts small. It's not about skipping luxury cars, it's about questioning why you're buying the extra latte. The $5 rule trains your brain before it trains your budget. By month 6, my small habit turned into a lifestyle. I wasn't just cutting back, I was rewiring how I thought about comfort and reward. Money stopped being emotional therapy. It became a quiet teammate building my future. Here's what no one tells you. Saving gets addictive once you see progress. Every time I watched that balance grow, it lit up my brain like a dopamine hit, the healthy kind. I started chasing that feeling more than temporary pleasure. I even applied the rule to bigger decisions. If I wanted to buy something expensive, I'd break it into $5 blocks. A $100 jacket? That's 20 coffees. Suddenly, perspective kicked in. Was that jacket worth 20 days of discipline? Usually, no. Perspective made me powerful. When you translate spending into trade-offs, money stops being abstract. It becomes time, effort, and energy. You start guarding it differently. That's when I knew. The $5 rule wasn't about cash, it was about consciousness. I didn't realize how deeply it rewired my habits until my friends noticed. They asked, "Why don't you join us for another drink?" I'd smile and say, "Because I already have something better brewing." It wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. Soon, I had over $1,000 saved from what-ifs. That's the magic of compound discipline. Small, boring actions multiply when repeated. I didn't win the lottery, I just stopped leaking opportunity. That's how real financial freedom begins. I used to think freedom was a number, a certain income or balance. But now I know it's a feeling. Waking up without panic, choosing peace over impulse, and watching your money work instead of vanish. $5 taught me that. One day, I realized something crazy. I hadn't bought anything unnecessary in 2 months, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. My habits had shifted so naturally that saving felt like second nature. That's how identity changes, silently. The $5 rule also made me more generous. Since I wasn't wasting on random stuff, I could give intentionally, to friends, to causes, to people who needed it. It's wild how cutting out noise creates room for meaning. I learned to reward myself differently. Instead of buying comfort, I started celebrating with milestones, a weekend off, a creative project, a walk outside. Turns out, joy doesn't have a price tag when you stop renting it from consumerism. It also changed how I saw time. $5 wasn't just money, it was minutes of my life traded for temporary comfort. Once I saw that exchange clearly, I became protective of my energy. That mindset spilled into every part of my routine. I began tracking not just expenses, but emotions. I realized I spent the most when tired or lonely. So, instead of shopping, I started calling a friend or journaling. Emotional intelligence became my secret savings account. People often ask how to start saving. I always tell them, don't start with math, start with mindfulness. Awareness fixes what budgeting alone can't. The $5 rule isn't about numbers, it's about noticing. Month after month, I kept building momentum. It wasn't perfect. Some days I gave in, bought that snack or delivery meal. But I didn't spiral. I simply noted it, learned, and moved forward. That's what made the habit sustainable. No guilt, just growth. Then something unexpected happened. My income started growing too. Because I'd mastered control, every raise now meant progress, not more spending. Discipline compounds upward. That's why most people stay stuck. They make more but keep leaking value. I started feeling peaceful in ways money can't describe. For the first time, my finances reflected my values. I wasn't chasing, comparing, or compensating anymore. I was simply living with intention. And that's a kind of wealth no paycheck can measure. The funniest part? My $5 rule went viral among friends. They started texting me, skipped coffee, added to my freedom jar. It became contagious. Sometimes one person's quiet habit sparks a whole wave of financial clarity. Now I can't unsee it. Everywhere I look, people trade peace for convenience, $5 at a time. But once you spot it, you can't go back. You start guarding every dollar like a vote for your future. And that's how I knew. Wealth isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not in flashy cars or designer clothes. It's in those tiny moments when you choose long-term peace over short-term comfort. That's where financial freedom begins. After 1 full year, I looked back at my accounts and almost laughed. That tiny $5 rule had turned into several $1,000s saved, just from pausing before swiping. The crazy part? I didn't even feel like I sacrificed anything. I realized the secret wasn't the amount, it was the awareness. $5 was never about coffee, it was about choice. Every time I paused, I proved to myself that I could say no when it mattered most. That small act built massive self-trust. Each skipped purchase whispered, "You're in control." And when you trust yourself with money, you start trusting yourself with everything: work, goals, even relationships. Discipline in one area spills everywhere. Eventually, I started applying the same mindset to time. Instead of asking, "Is this worth $5?" I'd ask, "Is this worth my energy?" The rule evolved from saving cash to protecting peace. That's when real wealth started showing up. I noticed something profound. Saving became less about deprivation and more about direction. Every dollar saved had a mission. It wasn't sitting idle. It was building a bridge to something I actually wanted. That shift made it exciting, not boring. By then, my freedom fund had grown enough to cover emergencies. Suddenly, small surprises didn't feel like disasters. I stopped living paycheck to paycheck, not because I earned more, but because I learned better. Awareness became my superpower. Friends started asking for tips. I didn't hand them spreadsheets. I just told them, pick a number small enough to repeat, big enough to matter. For me, it was $5. For you, it could be 10. The point isn't the amount, it's the consistency. I began seeing money differently. It stopped being something I chased and started being something I directed. That one perspective flipped stress into strategy. When you lead your money, it follows your goals instead of your emotions. Sometimes I'd still treat myself, but now it felt intentional. A nice meal after a big project, or a small trip after months of saving. Each expense felt earned, not impulsive. That's the quiet joy of mindful living, satisfaction without regret. My financial life transformed so much that I wondered why schools never taught this. We learn geometry before gratitude, equations before emotional awareness. Yet, understanding why we spend might be the most valuable math of all. One thing I learned: simplicity wins. The $5 rule worked because it was clear, doable, and repeatable. No complex budget apps, no guilt-driven motivation, just one question at a time. Will future me thank me for this? That question guided me out of debt. I used the same pause to cut unnecessary subscriptions, renegotiate bills, and rebuild my credit. Every decision stacked like bricks toward independence. Tiny steps, but they formed a strong foundation. Soon, I realized I wasn't just saving money, I was shaping identity. I became the kind of person who thinks before spending, who saves before complaining, who plans before panicking. The $5 rule turned into my compass for calm. Even on tough days, that simple rule anchored me. When everything felt chaotic, it reminded me that I still had control over small things, and small control often leads to big confidence. It's a quiet kind of power. My mornings changed too. Instead of buying coffee, I brewed my own and put $5 in a jar labeled Choice. Watching it fill up was more satisfying than caffeine. That jar wasn't just money, it was evidence of growth. By the second year, that jar funded my first online course. The skills I learned there helped me earn extra income, proof that saving can eventually turn into investing. One small pause built the runway for bigger dreams. Looking back, I realized the $5 rule was never about restriction. It was about alignment between who I was and who I wanted to become. Every time I chose long-term peace over short-term pleasure, I voted for my future self. People often ask, when did you finally feel free? Honestly, it wasn't when I hit a number. It was when I realized I didn't need to buy something to feel good. That emotional independence was priceless, and it started with $5. That's the irony. Real freedom costs less than we think. It doesn't come from earning six figures or buying more stuff. It comes from clarity, discipline, and the courage to pause before you spend. Simplicity outperforms sophistication every time. The $5 rule became my daily meditation. Every purchase, I'd pause and breathe. Most times, that breath was enough to break the cycle. It's funny how awareness, not income, becomes the true wealth builder. Over time, I noticed how peace replaced pressure. I didn't check my account out of fear anymore. I checked it with pride. That's the emotional return of discipline, a quiet sense of safety money alone can't buy. I even taught my younger cousin the rule. She started saving lunch money one bill at a time. A few months later, she texted me a photo of her savings jar. "It's working," she wrote. I smiled. Legacy doesn't need to be loud. That's what I love about simple habits. They multiply. They travel silently, changing lives without needing attention. That $5 rule began as a coffee decision, but it ended up rewriting how I define success. Success to me now isn't luxury. It's breathing room. It's saying no without guilt and yes without fear. It's being calm when others panic because you know you've built a safety net. One choice, one pause, $1 at a time. Today, I still follow the $5 rule, not because I need to, but because it reminds me where I came from. It keeps me grounded. Money's not about more anymore, it's about meaning. That's what true freedom feels like. If there's one takeaway, it's this. Discipline doesn't demand perfection, just repetition. One pause, one choice, $1, repeated often enough, changes everything. The size of the action matters less than the consistency behind it. So next time you reach for that coffee, that snack, that scroll purchase, pause. Ask yourself, will future me thank me for this? You'll be surprised how often the answer rewrites your destiny. And when you finally see your account grow, remember, it started here, with $5, a question, and a moment of awareness. That's how financial freedom is built, quietly, consistently, one decision at a time. If this story inspired you, hit like, share it with a friend who needs a reset, and subscribe to Simple Stroke Official, because your peace of mind deserves the same attention as your paycheck, and it can start today with just $5.